Hello and welcome to the old Fliers. A recent video we posted featured an aviation pioneering company called Short Brothers. This was founded in 1897. They set up to manufacture coal gas-filled balloons. In 1908, on hearing reports from British Aero Club members who had seen the Wright brothers' demonstrations of their aircraft at Le Mans in France, Oswald Short reportedly said to Eustace, his brother, "This is the finish of ballooning. We must begin building aeroplanes at once." 2 orders for aircraft were soon received, one from Charles Rolls, who ordered a glider, and the other from Francis McClean. In early 1909, construction was started of McClean's aircraft, the Short No. 1 biplane. This was exhibited at the first British Aero Show held at Olympia. Who was this Francis McClean? Well, Lieutenant Colonel Sir Francis Kennedy McClean was born 1st of February 1876 in England to well-to-do Irish parents. McClean worked as a civil engineer in the Indian Public Works Department from 1898 to 1902, when he left to focus on aviation matters. He had the money to do so. He met Wilbur Wright at Le Mans in France in 1908 and was invited to fly with him. Eager to take to the air himself as often as possible, he also gave financial help to the 3 brothers Oswald, Eustace and Horace Short, the Short brothers. Between 1909 and 1914, he bought 16 different aircraft, all but one built by Short brothers. He was awarded the Royal Aero Club Aviator's Certificate number 21 after flying a Short S-27 biplane at Royal Naval Air Station Eastchurch in September 1910. In February 1911, he offered to let both the Admiralty and the War Office use the aircraft and airfield at Eastchurch to teach naval and military personnel to fly heavier than air machines. He owned this land where an airfield had been built. This was the first facility of its kind in the world. Interesting that it was the Navy that had grasped the promise of the new technology. In 1912, Frank McClean made headlines and became a celebrity overnight when he flew a Short Brothers S-33 float plane between the bascules of the Tower Bridge in London. He then flew under at least 3 other much lower bridges: London Bridge, Blackfriars and Waterloo. On the return trip at Tower Bridge, the crosswind hooked him into the water. In 1914, he made a flight following the course of the Nile between Alexandria and Khartoum in a specially built 4-seater aircraft, the Short S-80 called the Nile. He reasoned that if seaplanes could land on the Thames, then why not on the Nile and other rivers in Africa? He and his party travelled to Alexandria in the SS Corsican Prince with crates containing a Short seaplane. Once the biplane had been reassembled, it was put into the water and McClean took off, flying eastward to the Nile Delta before turning south for Cairo and landing on the Nile. His eventual aim to reach Khartoum. Accompanying him on his venture was the co-pilot Alec Ogilvie and a 4-man support team, as well as his sister Anna. The aircraft could seat 4 people, and the combination of those on board varied, with the rest of the team travelling over land. A passenger for part of the journey was Horace Short. Horace described the Egyptians along the Nile as having been terrified by the sight of the biplane, citing the case of 2 native carpenters who were required to do some repairs. They refused to enter the machine, although the engine was out, lest it should fly away with them. On the outbreak of World War I in August, he was commissioned in the Royal Naval Air Service and carried out patrols in the English Channel before becoming chief instructor at Eastchurch. He transferred to the Royal Air Force when it was formed in 1918, but resigned his commission in 1919. After World War I, the British Air Ministry teams took up McClean's idea and began stringing together a chain of seaplane landing spots that eventually linked Egypt with South Africa. In 1925, the famous British pioneering aviator Sir Alan Cobham took off from Rochester in a plane fitted with floats on a route survey to Cape Town. His 26 stops included several on the Nile where McClean had landed, if that's a term when you land on water. But it was not until 1931 that Imperial Airways introduced a weekly England to Central Africa service terminating in Mwazanga on Lake Victoria, with the route extending to South Africa at the end of that year. Egypt by this time had established itself as a key stopover on several routes that were opening up to the distant corners of the British Empire, with the giant 4-engine biplane, the HP-42, which Handy Page called the first real airliner in the world, taking passengers eastwards and southwards in luxury that has never been matched. Cairo became synonymous with all the glamour and luxury attached to the early years of commercial flight. As early as 1919, the head of civil aviation in Britain, Sir Frederick Sykes, had correctly predicted that Egypt is likely to become one of the most important flying centres. It is on the direct route to India, to Australia, to New Zealand, while the most practical route to Cape and Central Africa is via Egypt. A journalist the following year described Heliopolis as the Clapham Junction of the Empire air routes. Senior colonial civil servants would rest overnight in the grandeur of Shepherd's Hotel by the Nile in Cairo before flying on as the 1930s progressed in newer and faster seaplanes southwards to distant corners of Africa. But the luxury didn't end at Shepherd's. The following morning, a launch would ferry passengers to the waiting Imperial Airways Empire flying boat, a classic icon of the 1930s, and they would be regally wine and dine as the majestic airliner headed south. By means of staging posts on rivers and lakes, the flying boat would lumber on sedately to Durban, which by the end of the decade had become the final destination. Egypt's golden age continued until World War II, after which Beirut took over the role as the region's flying hub. By this time, Frank McClean, the brave and determined Irishman who had done so much to show Egypt's potential as a centre of global aviation, had long been forgotten. McClean is remembered as a founder member of the Aero Club of Great Britain, later the Royal Aero Club, and was chairman in 1923 to 24 and again from 1941 to 1944. McClean died after a long illness in 1955 at the age of 79. Truly, McClean deserves the title of Britain's Father of Naval Aviation. Thank you for watching. Liking and subscribing helps the channel and promotes new material. Only 10 more videos and we will have posted 1,000 videos since 2012.